What do we learn about the resurrection of Jesus? That's what we're going to find out today in Mark 16. Well, here we are at the end of Mark. And I didn't know this, but I learned about it when I was doing my podcast, that if you start a 3-chapter-a-week Bible study on the first week in January, you end up at the end of Mark right at Easter time. So that's kind of interesting right there. But the idea is we're going to find out more about what happens to Jesus after his death and what is going on. Hi, everyone. This is Jill from the North Woods. I hope you're enjoying the slow roll through the Bible, one chapter at a time. I feel this deep dive into what it is that we're learning. Obviously, people spend their lives looking at certain aspects of the Bible, looking up certain words or certain passages. The idea behind this is that we're lay people looking at the Bible in human terms. What does it mean for us? What are we supposed to be doing? What are we supposed to be chewing through and thinking through to have this relationship with God that we want to have? So as we know, Jesus has been put to death, and now the Sabbath has passed. You can't do anything on Sabbath. You can't work at all, and there's all sorts of rules, and you certainly could not bury a body. So this was something that was done very quickly so that we could get Jesus off the cross before Sabbath took place. So now we have Mary Magdalene, Salome, that's going to be the mother of John and James, the sons of thunder, and another Mary. This is going to probably be Mary, mother of Jesus. And they're going now, because it's now the first day of the week, they're going to anoint Jesus, and they go with herbs and spices and different processes that they do through the burial process, and they couldn't get it done before Sabbath. So now they're walking there and they're thinking, who's going to roll away this stone? These stones are huge. They're massive. It seals up a tomb, and they're going to need someone who's going to roll this away. But when they get there, the stone is already rolled away. Imagine your panic. Your teacher, your rabbi, your son, it was buried, and all of a sudden now the door that was over the tomb is open. They see a young man sitting in there, and he says, don't be alarmed. You are seeking Jesus. He was crucified. He was risen. He's not here. So we're verifying the fact that Jesus actually was crucified. He did die, but he's not there right now. And the reason that's important too is because you had people say, oh no, he didn't really die on the cross. He was just gravely injured. Or he has not risen. He was stolen. This goes against it. The angel right here is saying, this is it. This is risen Jesus that is now gone from here. And some people speculated that this is an angel or this was Jesus himself just being unrecognized. Again, we don't know. The interesting thing is, and we'll get into this, is that Jesus had the cloth that was over his body. Then he had a face cloth that was over the face part of him there. And that was folded up nicely inside the tomb. And someone said that what you did when you were the head of a household in Judaism, you had a particular napkin. And while that napkin was still folded and perfectly sitting there, that means the head of the household's not done with the meal yet. He might get up, he might go get a drink, he might go do something, but this folded up cloth means I'm not done here yet. I am not done here yet. And Jesus wasn't done here either. So Jesus, now we know, crucified, died, risen. And so he says, go to the disciples and Peter and go ahead and tell them that they're going to meet up in Galilee. You'll see him there, just as he told you. And he did tell them that. And so the women flee. They're scared. They're astonished. You can imagine how much upset is involved in this. It almost applies the Greek word that they were stunned into silence. They couldn't even say anything to anyone because they were just so stunned about this. But they eventually told Peter and the disciples, apostles, and the story started to spread. It means they weren't running through the streets yelling it. I mean, maybe you might think of doing that, but instead they were just scared into that silence, but they did eventually go and tell. We see a miracle, and they probably ran straight to the apostles, straight to Peter, and told them. And so these bold women, they were amazing because, first of all, women had no legal rights in this nation. They weren't allowed to be witnesses in a trial. They were not considered on the same par with men. And who did God pick to be his first witnesses to the resurrection? Women. It was women. And again, if you were writing this as a novel, you're looking at this 200 years after the event and you were going to write backwards as a novel, you would have put women in there. You would have put lawyers and scribes and Pharisees and head Pharisees, and you would have done a whole different story. The fact that God picked women to be his first witnesses, who showed up at the tomb, who were bold enough to show up at the tomb. I mean, you might be afraid that they're just waiting for someone to come under this tomb and arrest those people. Everyone who comes to this tomb, arrest them. They are believing in this blasphemer. So that is amazing. And they were faithful in this. And that's what makes this gospel so credible, is that if you were trying to have this be propaganda, trying to make the apostles look good, trying to make anything into some sort of propaganda piece, you would not have picked this story. So that's what's the important thing here. And so then there is a longer ending to Mark at the very end. And this is not there at all of the different translations. Essentially, when you see ancient manuscripts, they just end at verse 8, and that's the end of it, the women fleeing from the tomb. Later manuscripts had a longer ending, and so some people believe that this was added on to explain what happened, because Mark kind of gives a abrupt ending. He's an abrupt guy. He immediately talks about things. He's giving the short version of what happened in the life of Jesus. And so it abruptly ends typically at 8. But later on, like I said, they took information from the other gospels and tacked it on. There's nothing in this additional ending in Mark that isn't in any of the other gospels. This is not made up. This isn't added, something like that. And so what we see is that Jesus appears to Mary Magdalene. She tells the disciples who don't believe her. Jesus appears in another form to two people walking in the countryside. This is the road to Emmaus that is mentioned in Luke. We'll get to hear about that more. He appears to the 11, and they had hardened hearts. He rebukes them for that. He gives them the Great Commission. Go and tell everyone and proclaim the gospel to whole creation. And that's really what it is. Whoever doesn't believe will be condemned, but there will be signs with the believers, casting out demons, speaking in tongues, and healing the sick. So these are signs that we're going to see in the books of Acts. But like I said, whether it's the official ending of Mark or a compilation of what happened because people felt that Mark was too abrupt at his ending, that is okay. And then at the very end, Jesus is taken up into heaven, sits at the right hand of God the Father, and the disciples go out and preach everywhere. And the Lord works through them through these signs. So that's really the big part of it. Like I said, the earliest codexes don't include these chapters. They end at 8 and don't include 9 through 20. Eusebius and Jerome, early church fathers, noted that it was not there, that this was ending at Mark 8. And about 1/3, it says the vocabulary of the ending of Mark 9 through 20 just wasn't found in any other pieces of Mark. So it really does appear that it was paraphrased from other gospels. It does appear in other gospels. It's not, like I said, made up. Anyway, that is how we get sort of like two endings to Mark. What I'm going to meditate on this week is the fact that Jesus told everyone what was going to happen. Gave him the sign of Jonah, told him what was going to happen, told him he was going to meet him in Galilee, and all those things happened. And somehow the disciples, the apostles didn't digest it. They didn't understand this claim. The Sadducees wouldn't have understood it because there's no life after death, according to the Sadducees. The Pharisees didn't understand it because he wasn't the true Messiah. We know better. We know everything. And yet the idea is that this was going to happen. And nobody who was following Jesus really was waiting at the tomb to see if this happened. No one said, well, is it 3 days yet? Okay, well, I just looked at my pocket sundial and we should go back there and go greet Jesus. Nobody did that. And boy, there's silence. There's silence there. Oh boy. But in the end, the truth is not ending. He is not here. He has risen. And what I'm going to pray about is that I won't be alarmed. In a world of uncertainty and heartbreak and fear, we have to remember Jesus always kept saying, don't be afraid, don't be alarmed. And even at this point, to the death of Jesus, he's telling people not to be alarmed. And what I'm going to share with others is that when that stone was rolled away, it was not to let Jesus out. Jesus wasn't there already. It was to let the women in so they could see, so they could believe, so they could bear witness to what it is. And in the end, that's what we're called to be too, witnesses. People don't like sharing the gospel. They find it intimidating. But remember, we are just told to be witnesses, which means that we're going to just tell what we know, tell what we saw, tell what we read. That's the idea. Oh boy, thanks so much for listening. I hope that you are going to join me now for Luke 1. That one is coming next. It is going to be a great gospel. It is my favorite one, I think, the Gospel of Luke. I really enjoy his writings. And as always, you can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. You can post right here. If there's something I can pray for you, I'm happy to do it. Have a great day and have a happy Easter if you don't watch the next one before Easter. Thanks so much.